Imagine your own brain, the very organ responsible for your identity, your memories, your entire sense of self, just suddenly turning against you.
Yeah, it's a terrifying thought.
Right. But it doesn't just attack randomly. It acts like this heat-seeking missile. It targets the things you love and value the absolute most. And it bombards you with these terrifying, relentless images of those exact things being destroyed, or even worse, images of you destroying them. And you can't turn it off.
It is, it's a profound, exhausting betrayal by your own mind. And for millions of people, that internal war zone isn't just some hypothetical scenario. It is their daily reality.
And that reality is exactly what we're digging into today.
Welcome to the Deep Dive, everyone. We have a really fascinating stack of research for today's session, mostly focused on deconstructing obsessive-compulsive disorder, or OCD.
Which is so needed right now.
It really is. We're going to look at the massive gap between what society thinks this condition is and the hidden agony of what it actually is. And importantly, we're going to look at a tangible solution. Right, the practical side of things.
Exactly. Specifically, we'll be examining how a telehealth practice in Georgia called Coping and Healing Counseling, or CHC, is completely rewiring how people access life-changing care for this.
I think we really need to start by dismantling the public perception of OCD, though.
Oh, absolutely.
Because if you ask the average person on the street to describe it, you almost always get this caricature.
Like the quirky sitcom character.
Yes, exactly. They describe a sitcom character who color codes their bookshelf, or, someone who uses a lot of hand sanitizer and likes their desk perfectly symmetrical.
Yeah, we've completely diluted the term. You constantly hear people say things like, oh, I'm so OCD about my inbox.
Right, right.
Or I'm a little OCD about how the dishwasher is loaded.
Right.
It's become this casual adjective for just being a perfectionist.
Which is incredibly damaging, honestly. When you dig into the clinical source material we're analyzing today, that whole tidy closet trope just vanishes entirely.
It really does.
True OCD is infinitely more complex. It operates on a mechanism of intense distress. We are talking about intrusive thoughts that hijack your consciousness.
Relentless thoughts.
Exactly. These relentless what-if loops that completely paralyze a person's ability to function. And that's usually followed by compulsive checking, rechecking, and reassurance seeking that never actually provides lasting relief.
Let's focus on that underlying mechanism for a second, because the sources provide a really helpful way to understand it.
The smoke alarm analogy.
Yeah, the smoke alarm.
Oh.
So think of the brain's threat detection system like a smoke alarm in your house. A healthy brain has a properly calibrated alarm, right? It goes off when there's an actual fire.
Right.
But a brain with OCD has a smoke alarm that goes off at the slightest wisp of steam from a shower.
Yeah.
Or like dust from sweeping the floor.
It's hypersensitive.
Exactly. The alarm is deafening, the cortisol spikes, the panic sets in, and the brain is just screaming, "Fire! You are in mortal danger."
That is a perfect framework for it, because the person experiencing it feels the exact same level of physiological terror as if there were a real fire.
Wow.
The alarm is demanding that they do something to neutralize the threat. So, they check the stove.
Right.
But because the alarm is malfunctioning, checking the stove doesn't actually turn the siren off. The brain just says, well, are you sure you checked it right? What if your eyes deceived you?
Or they check it again.
Exactly.
And again. And the real tragedy here is that the checking actually feeds the disorder.
It does. It reinforces the false alarm. But the physical checking is really only one manifestation.
Right.
The most defining and devastating characteristic listed in our research, the one that truly separates real OCD from that neat freak stereotype, is the profound shame associated with the intrusive thoughts themselves.
I want to spend some time here because this is the absolute core of the misconception. Our notes emphasize a crucial, non-negotiable fact. Having an intrusive thought does not mean you desire that thought.
No, not at all.
OCD actually attacks a person's deepest values.
Yeah. To put this into a human context, imagine a new mother.
Okay.
She is exhausted, she is fiercely protective of her newborn baby, and she loves this child more than anything in the world.
Right, as most new moms do.
Exactly. But suddenly, out of nowhere, her brain flashes a vivid, horrifying image of her dropping the baby down the stairs.
Oh, wow.
Or even harming the baby intentionally.
That's a staggering thought to deal with, the panic that must induce.
It's completely paralyzing. You see, a person without OCD might have a weird, fleeting thought like that, recognize it as just random brain noise, shake it off, and move on.
Right, like, oh, that was weird anyway, back to normal.
Exactly. But for the new mother with OCD, that malfunctioning smoke alarm goes off. Her brain insists that the mere presence of the thought means she is a danger to her child.
Oh, man.
It latches on to her greatest value, keeping her baby safe, and tortures her with the exact opposite scenario, not because she wants to do it, but specifically because the thought is so abhorrent to her true nature.
She is essentially being held hostage by a horror movie playing on a loop in her own mind,
Yes.
starring the thing she loves most. When you realize that is what OCD actually looks like, the Hollywood stereotype of being overly organized just feels incredibly trivial.
It trivializes a deeply debilitating condition. And think about the fallout of those thoughts. Because the intrusions are so dark, so disturbing, the person experiencing them feels this overwhelming, crushing shame.
Of course they do.
They are terrified to tell anyone, even a partner or a doctor, because they genuinely fear someone will lock them up or, take their children away.
Because they think it means they actually want to do those things.
Exactly. They believe the thoughts represent their true hidden desires.
Which, again, the clinical research explicitly states they do not. The thoughts are entirely ego-dystonic.
Right.
Meaning they are in direct opposition to the person's self-image and desires.
Yes. But because of that intense shame, the person just buries the struggle. And this leads us to a manifestation of the disorder in our sources that is particularly insidious.
Because it is entirely invisible to the outside world, right?
Exactly. It's a subtype known as pure O.
Purely obsessional OCD. This honestly blew my mind when I was reading through the SAC.
It surprises a lot of people.
Because usually we think of the compulsion as a physical act. You have a fear of contamination, so you wash your hands until they are raw.
Right.
The hand washing is visible. Someone can see you doing it and recognize, oh, this person needs help.
But with pure O, the rituals don't disappear. They just move entirely inward.
Wow.
The compulsions are completely mental. It is one of the most underdiagnosed and misunderstood types of OCD out there.
So if the physical compulsion is missing, what does a mental compulsion actually look like in practice? Like, how does someone perform a ritual inside their own head?
It can take many exhausting forms, honestly. Let's say a person has an intrusive thought that they might have accidentally said something highly offensive or inappropriate during a meeting at work. The mental compulsion is an agonizing, microscopic review of that memory. They will mentally replay the conversation in their head, word by word, trying to check the facial expressions of their coworkers in the memory.
Oh my gosh.
They're analyzing their own tone of voice, just trying to find absolute certainty that they didn't do something terrible.
And they might replay that one 10-second memory for like 4 hours.
Easily, yeah. Other mental compulsions involve silently repeating specific phrases or prayers to neutralize a bad thought, or even mental checking, repeatedly checking their own internal emotional responses to ensure they feel the correct amount of disgust when an intrusive thought pops up.
So to anyone sitting across the table from them, they might just look a bit distracted.
Right.
Or like they're quietly staring at their coffee cup. But internally, they are running on a psychological treadmill at a full sprint.
That's exactly what it is.
I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of someone dealing with that. If all of your rituals are mental, and you are hiding the terrifying intrusive thoughts because of the shame, how do you even realize you have a medical condition?
It's so hard.
It seems like it would be so easy to just conclude that you have a dark, twisted soul or a fundamentally broken personality.
Well, that is the exact trap they fall into. Our sources detail how people with pure O struggle silently, completely isolated in their own minds, convinced they are inherently dangerous or bad.
Because they don't see themselves washing their hands 50 times.
Exactly. Society has trained them to look for hand washing or light switch flicking, so they have absolutely no framework to understand that obsessively replaying memories or fighting internal thoughts actually counts as OCD.
They don't even have the vocabulary to ask for help.
No, they don't. And even if they did stumble into a general therapy session, if they don't explicitly volunteer the dark thoughts out of shame, a therapist might just diagnose them with generalized anxiety.
Which points directly to a massive structural failure in how we identify and treat this.
Absolutely.
And that failure is quantified in our research with a statistic that is genuinely hard to stomach.
You're talking about the treatment delay.
Yeah. When I read the clinical data on this, it literally stopped me in my tracks. From the onset of symptoms, the average delay for someone to receive adequate specialized treatment for OCD is over 11 years.
11 plus years. Let that sink in.
Just process the gravity of that timeline for a second. Imagine being a 14-year-old kid.
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly, your brain's smoke alarm breaks. You start having violent or disturbing intrusive thoughts about your family. You are terrified, deeply ashamed, and you begin spending 6 hours a day mentally repeating phrases to keep your family safe.
It's heartbreaking.
You fight this exhausting invisible war through high school, through college, into your first job. And on average, you will not get the correct help until you are 25 or 26 years old.
An entire decade of a person's formative years, completely overshadowed by an invisible struggle. And the tragedy of that time gap isn't just the suffering.
Right.
It's the compounding nature of the disorder. The longer OCD goes untreated, the more entrenched those neural pathways become. The brain gets better and better at running the compulsions.
It digs in.
Exactly. It digs its roots deeper into the architecture of a person's daily life.
It really is a systemic failure.
No.
And this is the turning point in our sources where the landscape completely changes when people do finally get access to the right kind of help. The results are phenomenal.
They really are.
Because OCD isn't a mystery. We actually have a highly effective way to treat it.
We do. The gold standard evidence-based treatment for OCD is a specific therapeutic modality called ERP.
Which stands for exposure and response prevention, right?
Correct. Exposure and response prevention.
I want to make sure we explain how this works clearly because it completely shifts the paradigm from traditional talk therapy. In fact, my understanding from the notes is that standard talk therapy can sometimes actually make OCD worse.
That is a vital distinction to make.
Mm-hmm.
If you go to a traditional talk therapist and say, I keep having this thought that I left the stove on and my house is going to burn down,
Okay.
a standard therapist might say, well, let's talk about the statistical unlikelihood of that. Let's reason through it.
They try to provide reassurance.
Exactly. They provide reassurance.
Which feels good in the moment.
It feels great for about 10 minutes. But for an OCD brain, reassurance is basically a drug.
Oh, wow.
The brain gobbles it up, and then the smoke alarm goes off again, demanding more reassurance. Talk therapy can accidentally become a compulsion itself.
That makes so much sense. So how does ERP break that cycle?
It targets the malfunctioning alarm directly. In ERP, a specially trained therapist guides the patient to safely expose themselves to the trigger, the thought, the image, or the situation that causes anxiety.
So that's the exposure part.
Yes, but the critical part is the second half, response prevention. The patient makes a conscious choice not to engage in the compulsive behavior.
Okay, so using our earlier example, if someone's compulsion is constantly washing their hands to relieve contamination fear, the exposure might be touching a doorknob.
Right.
And the response prevention is sitting with the panic without going to the sink.
Exactly. They sit with the anxiety, they just let the smoke alarm blare. And over time, this fascinating neurobiological process happens. The brain eventually realizes, wait, we touched the doorknob, we didn't wash our hands, and we didn't die.
The fire didn't happen?
The fire didn't happen. The anxiety naturally subsides. The brain slowly recalibrates the alarm system.
The logic of that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
You are teaching the brain through direct experience rather than trying to argue with it using logic.
Exactly.
And the clinical outcomes detailed in our sources are incredible.
The data shows that 70 to 80% of patients who complete a course of ERP see a significant reduction in their symptoms. 70 to 80%. After an average of 11 years of silent suffering, the vast majority of people who undergo this specific treatment get substantial, life-changing relief.
It is transformative. The sources also note that combining ERP with medication often produces the strongest possible outcomes.
That's great to know.
Yeah. So the clinical pathway is actually very clear and proven, and crucially, it works at any age. Whether someone has been masking their symptoms for 2 years or 40 years, the brain retains the neuroplasticity to learn that the alarm is false.
Which is incredibly hopeful, but it brings us to a massive practical hurdle.
Access.
Right, we know it works. But how does an average person actually get this highly specialized treatment? Because navigating the healthcare system to find an ERP specialist can be its own kind of nightmare.
Oh, it really can.
Which is a huge part of why that 11-year delay exists in the first place.
The lack of access is the primary driver of that delay. If you don't live in a major metropolitan area with a specialized mental health clinic, you might simply be out of luck.
And that is where our sources highlight a very specific modern solution, a telehealth practice operating in Georgia called Coping and Healing Counseling, or CHC.
What CHC is doing seems purposely built to dismantle the exact systemic barriers we've been talking about. Let's look at their structural approach. First of all, they operate entirely via telehealth.
Right. They are a 100% virtual practice. It is fully iPay compliant to guarantee medical privacy, of course, but the real power is the geographic reach.
Yeah, the notes say they are set up to serve all 159 counties in the state of Georgia.
Think about the impact of that. Georgia has a vast number of rural counties where access to any mental health professional is scarce, let alone a specialist trained in treating something as nuanced as pure O.
Exactly. By utilizing telehealth, CHC effectively erases the geographic barrier. You don't have to drive 3 hours to Atlanta for a therapy session. You log in from your living room.
It democratizes access to specialized care. But it's not just about reach, it's about the depth of the care they provide. Treating a complex disorder requires a nuanced approach, which is why CHC has built a deeply diverse, culturally competent team of over 15 licensed therapists.
And our sources list a variety of credentials here. Licensed clinical social workers, licensed professional counselors, licensed married and family therapists. Why does a multidisciplinary team matter so much for a patient?
Because OCD doesn't exist in a vacuum. It impacts every single facet of a person's life. A patient might need an ERP specialist to handle the intrusive thoughts, but they might also need a marriage and family therapist because the disorder has severely strained their relationship with their spouse.
That makes total sense.
Or a social worker to help them navigate systemic workplace stress that's exacerbating their symptoms. A diverse team means they can treat the whole person, not just the diagnosis.
And to that point, while OCD and ERP are the focus of our notes today, CHC handles a very wide spectrum of mental health needs.
They do a lot.
Yeah, they treat anxiety, depression, trauma, and PTSD, grief, and general stress. They work with individuals, couples, families, and teenagers from age 13 up, and they even offer life coaching. They really provide a comprehensive safety net.
They do. But we have to address the elephant in the room when it comes to mental health care, which is the cost.
It is the ultimate barrier. You can have the best telehealth platform in the world, but if the patient has to pay $200 an hour out of pocket, that 11-year delay is never going to shrink.
Financial accessibility is often the hardest problem to solve in specialized medicine.
Well, CHC has managed to crack that code in a way that is genuinely remarkable. They have structured their practice to integrate with almost all the major insurance networks.
Yeah, the numbers on this are amazing.
Listen to this. For patients on Medicaid, the copay for a session is $0.
Eliminating the financial burden entirely for the most vulnerable populations is a massive step toward true healthcare equity.
And for individuals with commercial insurance, Aetna, Cigna, Blue Cross Blue Shield, United Healthcare, or Humana, the out-of-pocket cost is typically just $35 to $40 a session.
It's incredible.
They have taken the gold standard, highly specialized treatment for a debilitating condition and brought the cost down to the price of a standard doctor's copay.
When you combine the statewide telehealth reach, the specialized ERP training, and the integration with major insurance networks, CHC provides a blueprint for how modern mental health care should actually function.
Absolutely.
They are actively closing that 11-year gap.
They are turning an impossible hurdle into a manageable next step. And if you are listening to this right now and you recognize the signs, if you've been fighting a silent, exhausting mental war with intrusive thoughts, or if you know someone who might be masking the symptoms of pure O, there's a very clear path forward.
You don't have to wait another decade.
You really don't.
Yeah.
The friction to getting started is incredibly low.
It is. CHC has actually set up a free 2-minute OCD screening tool online. Yeah, it is a completely private way to just check in with yourself and see where you stand. You can take it at cheesetherapy.com, mental health tests.
Awesome. And if you're ready to reach out and talk to a professional, you can email their team at support@cheesetherapy.com or just give them a call at 404-832-0102.
Taking that 2-minute test might be the first time someone actually sees their internal experience reflected back to them as a recognized, treatable condition.
It really could be the first step out of the dark. We've covered a tremendous amount of ground today. We started by tearing down the insulting myth of the tidy closet.
Very insulting, yeah.
We waded into the heavy, often invisible reality of intrusive thoughts and mental compulsions. We explored the logic of ERP and how it literally rewires the brain's malfunctioning alarm system. And we looked at how coping and healing counseling is utilizing telehealth and insurance integration to make that relief accessible across the entire state of Georgia.
It is a journey from profound misunderstanding to highly practical, evidence-based hope.
It absolutely is. But as we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. something that extends beyond just a clinical diagnosis.
Okay.
We established today that OCD attacks what a person loves most. We learned that the presence of a dark, intrusive thought does not mean someone secretly desires it. In fact, it means the exact opposite.
The brain is actively trying to protect the core values it is terrified of losing.
Exactly. So consider how that framework might change the way you view your own mind. Even if you don't suffer from clinical OCD, every human being occasionally has bizarre, dark, or socially unacceptable thoughts flash across their consciousness.
Oh, for sure.
We usually judge ourselves so harshly for them. But perhaps the most random, disturbing thoughts our brains produce aren't evidence that we are inherently flawed or bad people.
Right.
Maybe they are just our brain's awkward, misfiring attempt to guard the very things we hold most dear.
It's a profound reframe. It replaces judgment with curiosity.
It takes the shame right out of the equation. And once you remove the shame, you realize that you aren't fighting a monster in the dark. You are just dealing with a very complex, occasionally malfunctioning piece of biology.
Yeah.
And as we learned today, we have the tools to fix it. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Take care of yourselves, and we'll catch you next time.